I'll call to order the meeting of the Personnel Committee on December 5th, 2023 at 4 p.m. First item of business is the approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the October 18th, 2023 Personnel Committee minutes.
I'll move approval.
Great.
Second.
And I have one note about each one of the votes. It says roll call vote, but I think we should eliminate that from each one because we didn't do a roll call for anything last time.
Perfect, I'll do.
Any other discussion or changes or amendments? Okay, so I'll go ahead and call for a vote with those changes as outlined, just as we discussed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Next item of business, public appearances for non-agenda items. I do not believe we have anyone in the room or online.
I'm actually here to
Oh, you're here for public
share
appearances?
some comments.
Fabulous. Okay, so go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity here. I am speaking this afternoon not as an official representative of the police department, but rather as one of our nearly 300 employees of the city of Fitchburg. I selected this evening's meeting to share my thoughts due to the confluence of several topics, most recently critical conversations about the city's future staffing and funding needs. Shortly after beginning my career with the city 15 years ago, we were told of dire financial circumstances. While the union voted to lay me and other new hires off, the city settled on a furlough program. Around that time, I developed what many would call an unhealthy habit of watching every council meeting. Over time, through several councils, we have heard that things will improve and that help will come. Over the years, as the city added residents and businesses, expectations of staff continued to grow, but that help didn't always come as promised. Only within the last few years have I heard significant recognition from elected officials about the importance of city staff and respecting our time. This recognition is greatly appreciated. Earlier this year, a study completed by Baker Tilly confirmed what many of us have long known. In order for the city to transition to the place many of us yearn it to be, there must be a significant investment in human capital and infrastructure. Additionally, the study validated staffing plans by both the police and fire departments, highlighting the impacts of years of understaffing these critical public safety positions. The study also mentioned the vital need for the police department to enhance its recruiting efforts, guidance that to implement completely also requires additional personnel. These recruiting efforts are critical because the city of Fitchburg has been impacted by the national crisis in hiring and retaining police personnel. Over the last year, we have worked with various shortages, sometimes reaching as low as 65 to 70% of our authorized strength. So despite progress, I was disappointed when in a recent council meeting, a comment was made that referenced the police department magically filling its 5 current vacancies. I'm here to tell you that there is nothing magical about recruiting and filling positions that very few people are interested in pursuing. The magic referred to is nothing but hard work put forth by our human resources team and members of the police department. Not only is it a challenge to recruit people into this profession, it's also a challenge to differentiate the city of Fitchburg from other nearby competing communities who frequently offer significantly more pay, better benefits, and newer facilities, especially as these competing communities are all trying to make their own claim. In addition to recruiting new employees, it is a challenge to keep Fitchburg employees as they are highly sought after in every position due to the training and unique experiences they receive here. The main disappointment, however, was that comment on its face seemed to imply that the police department was solely responsible for filling these vacancies. The truth is we're all responsible. We, meaning city employees, elected officials, and the community members we work for or represent, must think long and hard about how we prioritize our people, the people who make this city function. Through my experience and perspective, I know there are many competing priorities. The pie only gets so big and that many factors are out of our control. We can, however, work together potentially in non-traditional ways to find actionable solutions. We can be more creative and not settle for the middle of the pack with our compensation and other benefits. I'm confident that if we work together, we can become the leaders in Dane County we desire to be and have the resources we all need to be successful. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the committee's and council's recent efforts to support initiatives like a retention bonus. Still, the fact is that many personnel, not just in police and fire, are already beyond burned out. Continual order ends, overtime, and growing expectations will continue to chip away at our people, either driving them out or leading them to other negative impacts. We must seek long-term solutions. As part of the mission, vision, and values work you're about to hear about, I had the pleasure of meeting with many different employees from different departments, and I was in awe of the dedication and pride I saw from my fellow city employees. If it were not for the continued dedication of these team members, the city wouldn't be where it is now. In closing, I ask you and your fellow council members and our community to consider how we can take a more active role in not only recruiting and hiring new employees, but also improving the lives of those who already work here. As one of my favorite authors succinctly puts it, humans aren't a resource, they are the point.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you so much. Any questions from the committee before we move on? And anything else, any other public statements? Thanks for joining us. Are you staying for the, okay, perfect. So we'll move on to agenda item 4A, presentation of the city's new mission and vision statements and core values update.
Okay, I'm just gonna bring up the presentation up here, so bear with me. So we are really excited to be here. We've got some members from the internal work group around, so we kind of wanted to start out with everybody who's here, who's part of the work group, to introduce themselves for folks watching too. So I don't know if Wendy wants to start.
Sure. Wendy Rosen, Library Director. Joyce Fry, Economic Development Specialist.
Ned Hartwick from the police department.
Gabe Schrader, building inspection.
And Megan Christian, record specialist in the police department.
And then we also had Jeremy Crosby, a part of Fact TV. He's not able to make it. Jack Pearson with building inspection, Mark Hodel from streets, Carla Tooley from reception, or the clerk's department, and then Rob Coonsey from fire, and then myself from HR. So it's been a really great work in progress. So we asked for any volunteers to give the presentation today, and Megan and Gabe both volunteered. So we have a presentation for you, and I'll kind of let Megan start.
So thank you for letting us be here today to share our hard work with everyone. So there's kind of 4 steps that we took as an internal work group. The first step pretty much started with Sarah and Ned, where they sent out a call out for employees to volunteer to be a part of the mission, vision, and values work group. And then that's kind of where we led into our initial employee meetings, and we sent out surveys to everyone. Along with the first step, we tried to have 2 work group members meet with each city department. So this all started back in April of this year. And we split up the city departments and everyone met with their respective department. So kind of a breakdown at the bottom of our city of 274 employees, 83 at City Hall, 66 at police, 59 fire, 32 at Public Works, and 34 with the library that we all had to catch up with. And like Sarah said, these are our members of our work group. And kind of going along with that, all 274 employees were asked the same questions. They were not geared towards each department. They were the same questions all throughout. Over the summer, there were about 15 meetings that were held. And with a 24/7 department like fire and police, sometimes it wasn't feasible to meet with each individual employee. So we created an online survey and sent it out to the employees that we weren't able to get in touch with, and they could respond that way.
So the thoughtful questions that were asked in step 2. So what do we do and why do we do it? Why do we work? Why did we choose Fitchburg? And what keeps you here at Fitchburg, right? So then we went into like, what values drive you? What is your motivation to come to work every day? What is your motivation to help the community? What makes a great coworker? What do we want to see in each other? You know, accountability and stuff like that. And then where do you see Fitchburg in the future? What is our vision and where should we be? So that led into step 3, where the internal work group evaluation of department discussions, and we identified trends.
And then from there, we just broke down all the information we gathered from everyone, and we identified the main trends. And so some of the responses we got to what do we do are listed below, but our most popular responses were we help others and we solve problems, and we're here to serve everyone in Fitchburg. And then with how do we do it, we do our jobs with kindness, respect. We work together as a team. We're transparent in everything that we do. And why do people choose Fitchburg? It's a small family feel, it's progressive. You come to work, you feel like you make a difference, and there's excitement, flexible. So we got some pretty good responses to that question.
And like the values and what values drive you. Reliability, kindness, pride, ownership, teamwork, and then what makes a great coworker. So are you accountable? Are you knowledgeable? Are you a team player? Responsive, compassionate, and stuff like that. And then where do you see us in the future? Where do you see the city of Fitchburg in the future? Are we trying new things? Are we retaining employees? Are we sustainable? A community feel? I think the biggest one, is it a positive and healthy work culture? So, and then that led into draft number 4, where we compiled everything and then we shared it with city staff, the mayor and council, and then we had a survey with that.
And then from the survey is where we created our drafts. So with the trends that everyone answered with, we then drafted a mission, vision, and the core values. And then we sent out a survey with 3 possible options for each one, along with the draft core values that we came up with. From that survey, we received 100 responses. And then from there, we just kind of created this preamble to everything that we did. And just reading that first paragraph, the city of Fitchburg is fueled by a team of nearly 300 employees who are dedicated to their work. Each day, the team serves our growing community of over 34,000 residents that sits just south of Wisconsin's capital of Madison. Fitchburg's 35 square miles span from rolling farmland to contemporary urban settings and include cutting-edge businesses and unparalleled parks and trails. Rooted in its agricultural and Irish heritage, Fitchburg is one of Wisconsin's most diverse and fastest-growing communities. Charged with serving our evolving community today and planning for tomorrow, our team is committed to meeting the needs and expectations of our residents, businesses, and visitors.
So we take pride in our work that is centered on the following mission, vision, and values. So this was compiled, sent out to all the employees, and then this is the final. So the mission, to serve the needs of Fitchburg through innovation and teamwork. The vision, to be a partner in building a thriving, inclusive, and sustainable community that everyone is proud to be a part of. And then our core values. So, we asked, as a group, is this measurable, achievable? Is it specific, realistic? Does it apply to everyone? And is it relevant? So accountability, we demonstrate our responsibility to all through responsive, transparent, and ethical actions. Innovation, we strive to be forward-thinking while using our resources creatively and efficiently. Service, we support our community and each other through accurate, reliable, and timely responses. And teamwork, we work together to provide efficient service and solve problems.
And then from there, all these core values will be added to our employee performance evaluations starting January 1st of 2024. And then we will be putting up signage with our mission and vision and also the core values on the city's website and throughout the city facilities. Any questions or comments?
So one thing that they do at my workplace, they've came up with these, what they call DNA fundamentals. And we landed on 31, and it's basically 31 different ways of restating the golden rule, but it's things like, being a lifelong learner, walking in other people's shoes, that sort of thing. And every week we focus on a different fundamental. And if there's any meeting going on with more than 3 people, we have a little bit of a discussion about that. So we keep everything kind of fresh in our minds. Is there any thought that, rather than just having this compiled and sitting somewhere, that you constantly put it in the employees' faces so that they continually are reminded of these sorts of things?
Yeah, I think we had several conversations regarding how do we get this, and we went through this in the police department, is how do we make this a fabric? How do we make this part of the fabric, weave this into our daily operations? And in the police department, and it's something that we've talked about a little bit, and one of the things that we've done is we've recentered our awards and recognition program. So we're actually recognizing people based on exhibiting these values. And I think that's something that maybe we could work towards as a city as far as looking at an internal recognition program for that. We look at that as we do our interview questions, our hiring, and incorporating those values, having people explain those things to them in our recruiting materials. And so I think we were really focused on getting these things taken care of, and now I think the next phase of this is really how to, beyond the evaluation, how do we get this to be a part of our daily fabric and our function as a team.
Oh, let me just take one step back. Bravo, this is awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really impressive work, and I love that you laid out the process. It seemed like it was really thorough and really included everybody, which is absolutely fantastic. Does the work group continue now that it has been selected?
It could continue as we look at ways to kind of live and breathe the core values and mission vision. So I could see us meeting again after we finalize this, because we also have to look at signage and how we're going to incorporate this into all the performance evaluations. And we already have a system kind of set up, but yeah, there's still more work to be done. So absolutely, I could see us all meeting again. Yeah, continuing. It was a fun initiative. Everyone, it was a big help. So it was really nice.
I think, as I alluded to, just meeting with, I had the opportunity to go down to the Public Works Garage, Streets Department, and meet with those guys who I think we all see out and about. And it was impressive. If I could have bottled up, I think there was some apprehension that maybe no one wanted to participate. I mean, I'm literally going down there, most of them have no idea who I am, and asking them these questions that I think on their face kind of seem kind of a little silly to some people. But we had a great time, and if I could have bottled up the enthusiasm and the pride that team takes in their work, it was impressive. And so I think even as a city employee, I think sometimes we take for granted what other city departments do to make the city run, and forget that there's people here 24/7 in inclement weather, in less than ideal circumstances. And so I think it's really cool. I wish, community members and more people could see behind the scenes nature of that, but this whole process was really cool to connect other city employees with people we have never met before, never worked with, so we appreciate the opportunity.
That's very cool. Joe, anything from you?
Yeah, nothing to add, but I've gone through processes like these, and I've always found them incredibly helpful. So I'm glad this is happening, and I imagine the process itself was valuable for you all, and even taking it on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the thing
Sorry, dog's freaking out.
Yeah, the thing, I've been on personnel for 4 years now, and it just like blows me away how great the city staff is in the city. Like, it's just been, it's the thing I didn't quite imagine when I was running for office. I didn't imagine like how well I get to know the staff and how impressed I would be by the work that was done, but I just like every single time, I'm just so grateful for all the work that you all do, and I know how much working in city government is a calling. It's not just a job, and I think that everyone in the city, everyone that works in city government, I'm sure feels like that, but I do truly feel like this city in particular, the employees really feel that and embody that in their work. And I think that's reflected in the type of responses that you got and the type of enthusiasm that people showed for the process. So really, like, great work, and really heartening to see this be the result. So thank you.
If the council or elders' comments are done, I also want to express my thanks, obviously, for Ned and Sarah for taking the lead on this project. When I came to talk about it, as always, yeah, we can get it done. And you came up with a great process to develop it. You involved a lot of people in the process. You saw input from a number of, really every single employee throughout the city had an opportunity to contribute to this in one way, shape, or form. Our elected officials did as well. So thank you to the both of you for taking the lead on it. Megan, Gabe, thank you for your work on the entire work group and for presenting. Wendy, Joyce, thank you as well, and to all the other folks. I mean, it is a true testament to the type of people that we have here in the city of Fitchburg who are serving our community and what they're capable of, and quite honestly, what they believe and exude every day when they come into work. It is a calling. We all take a very, we all have a high sense of pride in that calling. And while we're not always perfect, we certainly do strive to serve our community the best that we can each and every day. So thank you to the entire work group for your work on it.
All right. Well, if there are no other comments from the committee, anything else? All right. We can move on to agenda item. Thank you so much for coming today. Appreciate your time. Next up is agenda item 4B, employee handbook updates.
Bear with me, I'm gonna share my screen. I made a little PowerPoint just because I think it's nice to kind of put it as a visual.
Yeah. You know,
There's a lot there.
I wish you had enough time to send us like a high-level heads up first. I just went start to finish, and I'm like,
There's a lot.
removing this bit about holiday pay is gonna make this ambiguous, isn't it? Here's another one, it's gonna be ambiguous, and then I got down to the end where it's
We'll
like,
get into all
we're
that.
combining it all.
Yeah, no
Okay.
worries, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So a lot of employee handbook updates. The first update is combining vacation, personal days, and holidays to make a PTO or a paid time off bank of time. So you might be asking, why are we doing this? It's really to give employees the flexibility to manage their time off. And also, not all city holidays are reflective of all the holidays out there. So there are employees that celebrate other holidays. So now they're not forced to have to use another accrued time for a holiday that they observe. So I do want to be clear, this does not include sick time. So sick time is still its own bank of time. We're not touching sick time. This is truly only vacation, personal days, and holiday days. I want to add in, manager does have approval discretion. So there are some very customer-facing jobs where if City Hall or library, for example, if a facility is closed, there might not be work to be done at that facility. So the manager can decide, actually, there's not anything for you to do. You can't come in when City Hall or library is closed. So we want managers to have that discretion because we don't want employees coming in on a day that we're closed and not having something to do. More often than not, there probably are some projects or something they can do, but we want to make sure managers have that discretion. This is for all permanent, non-represented city employees because the employee handbook only is for the non-represented employees. All employees received an additional day of vacation that was budgeted in the 2024 budget, so thank you for approving that. And so that was added in. To show you more on how this would work, next slide here. I wanted to give you a picture of what 2023 looks like versus what 2024 will look like. So you can see for a full-time non-exempt new hire this year, they would receive 10 days of vacation, 2.5 days of personal, and 10.5 holidays. With 2024, combining all of that with that one additional vacation day, it's 24 days of PTO, so they can start using that. Everybody's front-loaded in January and gets all of this time. If they were to use it all and leave in March, they would have to just pay back the city. That's already how we function with vacation and personal time. The only difference is now holiday time will be added into there too. So I hope if that makes sense. So yeah, everybody gets all that time in January. They can use it, but if they leave the city, they might have to pay the city back for any time that they had used. The carryover for, we have a vacation carryover policy right now. That would be called a PTO carryover. It's still 40 hours. So an employee can carry over up to 40 hours of PTO into the next year. One concern one of my concerns was that what if an employee sees all this PTO time and then uses it all, and then here comes November, December, it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, what, I've got to work on those holidays? We don't want that to happen. So the timekeeping system Paylocity is going to auto default on the days that City Hall is closed and library is closed to have 8 hours of PTO, so that an employee would actually have to override it and say that they were working that day. So it's kind of a safeguard so that employees know, so they don't look at this big bank of time and start using all the time and not account for the days that City Hall is closed, if that makes sense. It is a change. So, And then only if an employee is required to work on the holiday will they get the holiday premium. So if you decide to come in on a holiday, that doesn't mean you're gonna get the halftime premium, only if you actually have to be here. So that's still the same too. So that is PTO. So I was curious if you wanna kind of stop at each little update and then talk about it, or see if you have any questions.
I think it'd probably be good to stop at each one and just
Yeah.
go through some questions related to
Yeah.
it. I'm curious about, so in terms of holidays, let me start with this. So did you consider just having certain holidays that are more, that not all people celebrate, such as Christmas and Christmas Eve, or, those holidays be the ones that add to the PTO bank and the other ones be just straight holidays, or?
No, we didn't. We just kind of really talked about that PTO bank and just giving, because it's very similar to how police and fire are, where they get these floating holidays. They get all these holidays. We're basically kind of mirroring what police and fire are doing with their holiday times.
There was also an accounting efficiency to be had from a payroll processing standpoint, to not have to track each particular bank that an employee was choosing to use time from as well. So instead of having what we currently would now, 5 different categories of potential leave, paid leave, vacation, personal holiday, comp time, and sick time, by combining 3 of them into one, we're at least going from 5 to 3. So basically you'll have sick leave, comp time for those who are eligible to accumulate comp, and then the PTO. So that does at least allow, again, some efficiencies to be had there. And it also, we would run into situations at the end of a year where somebody may have inadvertently used vacation instead of holiday, and then we'd have to go back to payroll and say, okay, they took the time off, they wanted to carry over 4 hours of vacation, because we don't allow holiday time to be carried over. So we'd have to go back and rekey that to allow them to then be able to use their 40 hours or carry over their 40 hours of a holiday, for instance. So there was really some efficiencies that we were trying to capture with this change as well, in addition to the things that Sarah's mentioned.
And one of the things too, Wendy is here because library board approved for MLK Day to be added to the list of observed holidays, or recognized holidays for the library. So that's now, you really do pretty much mirror City Hall for closures. But that was something that, just kind of adding that into the slide. So.
The one thing that strikes me is, because I read through this section, the updated section in, I guess it's not section 3.23, paid time off. When you list like the length of service and how many hours you get as you go up in the pay grades, the one thing that occurred to me is in terms of like if I was thinking about how I would plan my vacations, like it didn't specify, like I know it's all PTO, but like there are 10.5 holidays, right, that are like gonna default to PTO. I think it'd be helpful to say somewhere in that section, like 10.5 of these are your floating holidays, however many hours that equates to, so that someone can plan on their vacation, like, oh, I only have 2 weeks of vacation, so I think the clarification of that would be helpful, because I didn't see that be clear in the section that I read through.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
Anything else from Bill? Joe?
I guess just along with your, streamlining, there was verbiage in there about only streets, parks, and utility PTO on recognized holidays counts for overtime. Is that are there gonna be monkey wrenches with those, only specific employees get this benefit?
So this was a provision that was, just to give a bit of historical perspective. So back when Act 10 was passed by the state legislature, the Public Works, Streets, Utilities, and Parks Maintenance folks were able to, prior to that, through their contract, were allowed to count paid time off towards overtime calculation later in the work week. So for instance, if, and in most situations it was a holiday that this was creating some issues. If, for instance, 4th of July could be a good one. If it falls on a Tuesday, for instance, and they were called in on a Saturday to repair a water main break or something along those lines, those 8 hours of holiday that City Hall was closed and that there was no work for them, they weren't authorized to be here, would not count towards their call in for overtime. So that was addressed in a subsequent handbook update after the policy was initially changed to not allow, they were basically the city followed FLSA regulations on the calculation of overtime after Act 10. So I think 2 or 3 years after that had been done by the city, there was some conversation amongst the Public Works team with city administration and ultimately approved by the Personnel Committee to make that change to allow holiday time to count towards that overtime calculation. So we did not intend to change any policies or practices of the city as they currently stand today through this update. So that's why you see the language written how it is today, is in order to try to capture what we're currently doing and allowing those what used to be holiday hours under the current system count if a Public Works employee, for instance, is called in, but reflecting that use of personal time off on an observed holiday for the city now will still count much like it did before, so.
Yeah, I've worked with payroll systems and they're, necessarily complex. And I'm glad you're able to streamline, and then I saw this and I'm like, oh, so it's not as streamlined as you could make it, but there's always exceptions, right?
Yeah, there's always still gonna be some manual calculations, if you will, that payroll's gonna do. I don't know if that perfect solution exists out there, right? Sadly.
Right.
Joe, anything from you? Just wanna make sure
No, this looks good.
yeah, it's a really interesting idea.
Good.
I mean, I guess it comes from the public safety sector, but I've never heard of it for.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and just the fact that it's good that you've got your defined city holidays, but you're just saying,
Use them as
that's
a-
just 10.5 days you can take whenever you want. Because like you said, not everybody celebrates Christmas. Or,
Right.
I just, a couple of weeks ago, I asked a guy at work who was born and raised in Germany, what does Thanksgiving mean to you? How about Independence Day,
Great. Our second update was an increase to the on-call incentive. So we have certain employees that have to hold an on-call phone, so they have to be available. They might be at home or they might be out and about with their family, and if they get a call, they have to come in. This was approved by council and included already in the 2024 budget. Basically, right now, the policy is that they get $20 a day, that's Monday through Friday, and then $35 a day on a Saturday and Sunday. That would come to about $170 to hold the on-call phone for a 7-day period for a Public Works maintenance worker. If you look at the average pay of a Public Works maintenance worker, and with this new increased on-call incentive, we would pay them equivalent to 1.5 hours at their straight time hourly rate. So we take the hourly rate, then we divide that by 2, add that on to the hourly rate, and then times that by 7 days. And so that goes from $170 to about $300. So it's a really nice increase, and we have more staff now wanting to sign up to take that on-call phone. It gets us more in line with what other municipalities are paying. So we actually did look at other area municipalities and their on-call pay, and we found that we were one of the lowest. So that's how we realized we really need to make a change here. So we worked with Public Works Director Tim, administration and finance to make this happen. So it's a really great change.
So the 170 that would have been for everybody, and then this particular $300.63, that would vary by employee based on their pay rate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just used the average hourly rate of the
Right.
maintenance workers, but yeah, it will vary based on their hourly rate of pay. Yep. And there's other employees included in this: IT, police dispatchers. The only group that is not going to receive it as pay, but would prefer to continue to earn it as hours off is building maintenance. So given that they enjoy having the 4 hours off the week that they're holding the on-call phone, we didn't want to change that policy because they really enjoy that. It's something that we can still manage, so that's why they're a little different and still remaining the same.
What's that we were saying about always going to be some exceptions?
Yeah. Right. But we're very grateful for all the employees that hold these on-call phones because they really can't do much outside of work, just kind of waiting and being available, and that's precious time that they're giving us, so.
And would they get called in presumably, I mean, I guess it depends they're not necessarily doing overtime, it depends on
like that.
But they'll get time and a half for coming in.
They'll
So
get
if
time and a
there's an
half.
emergency and they have to
Yeah.
come in, they'll get time and a half.
Outside of normal work hours,
Right.
there's a call-in provision in the handbook.
Yeah, I know that's, my husband had knock-off one for a while at work and it was, it's not fun.
You can't go very far.
Yeah, it's nice to have an incentive to change.
So is this also like, how does this work with the paid on-call firefighters?
So paid on-call firefighters are different. So they're paid an hourly rate. They don't hold a phone necessarily. They're scheduled and they have schedules where they come in and work and provide staffing at the fire station. So they're not part of this.
So, okay, so you said at the fire station, so it's always referred to as paid on call, paid on premises. So if they're at the fire station, I assume that meant paid on premises, and I was always unclear as to what paid on call meant then.
They're both the same. So
They become more interchangeable.
Exactly.
Or the POX, right?
Yeah, so
Right,
exactly. POX has seemingly been the transition, so, yeah, it's
So
my.
the firefighters, they're always on site, they're not really
they're
at home on
scheduled to
call.
come in a shift, right? They're
Yeah,
they're
okay.
not called in to come in and be available. They're at the station. They're actually have a schedule, so they know when they have to come in.
And if there's a large incident and a paid on call or POX firefighter were to come in for that incident and they hadn't been already at the station filling a shift, they would receive their hourly pay, for coming in then at that point in time, so.
But this new policy is really not related to the
It's completely
firefighters.
different, right?
Yeah,
And it's
okay.
just, and these positions, it applies to our permanent, full-time, permanent, part-time employees. So our POX staff, our LT hourly
Sure.
staff, so that this doesn't apply.
Makes sense.
Great.
And then the third update is an interesting update. So this is updating the FMLA policy for non-represented employees. This is, we have to give, by the Department of Labor, we have to give a 60-day notice when we want to change the FMLA tracking. Right now, we have a calendar year for FMLA, so January to December. Why we want to move to a different period. We want to move to a rolling 12-month period, and the reason being a calendar year has opportunities for employees to stack FMLA usage. So for example, you could have someone go out the last 2 to 3 months of the year and have another FMLA event and be out for the first 3 months of the following year. So you really can have someone out for a very long period of time. The biggest concern, and what I've seen a lot happen here, is for birth of babies. So as an example, if someone went out on October 20th and had a baby, they wouldn't be using their full 12 weeks, right? Because the calendar year ends before the 12 weeks. They actually, by law, get another 12 weeks right away in January of the following year because they weren't able to exhaust their 12 weeks. So we've had employees know this and because HR has to inform them, and so then they're able then to take another 12 weeks, and a lot of them take it intermittently and spread it out through the next year, which can cause operation, scheduling issues too. So it is the easiest to administer when you do a calendar year because it's really easy, did they use any FMLA between January and December? But if we go to a rolling 12-month period, basically what we do is we look back at the preceding 12 months before their request for leave and just see how much time have they used. So for example, I have an example here. So let's pretend Alex requests 2 weeks of FMLA starting on July 31st. HR then looks back 12 months from July 31st back to the previous August 1st to see if any FMLA had been used, and then we determine how much time that the employee has available. So it's kind of always rolling. So it's based on when they've used the time. So they can't use another 12 weeks until they've passed that 12-month period. It's similar, but it's different. There's no stacking and there's no issues with the birth of a baby example, which has been happening a lot in the last couple of years. So.
And this will also align with the paid
parental leave. Correct.
12-month rolling
Right.
look back.
How we want to administer the paid parental
So
leave.
there'll be consistency there between the two.
And the reason it's only for non-represented, we can't make this change without working with the unions. They have to agree to the change. So that'll be something to look at for when we go into negotiations for 2024 or 2025.
So let's say in your example, somebody has, just say a block of 12 weeks that they took off. Roughly a year later, say right in the middle of that 12-week period from the previous year, they need to take more time off. And you say, well, in the past 12 months, you've taken off 8 weeks, so you can have 4 more. But by the time you get to the end of those 4, now 12 months back, would they accrue those initial,
It's month to month, so every month drops off as you keep moving forward. So we wouldn't have to, so if they used 8 weeks already in the last, what is that, 4 months, right? No,
Well,
2 months.
my point is, if they took some time off last year and they're taking time off in that same general time of year, on day 1, they're only eligible for so much.
Exactly.
But by the end of the time that they're taking off, the calendar has moved forward, and so now some of this time from last year dropped off. Can they then extend it?
Yes.
Okay.
As long as their FMLA application says, though, that will say how many weeks or they need to be out. So if it's only 8 weeks, for example, they need to be out. We would follow whatever the FMLA application states for duration for being out, if that makes sense. So so each month drops off as we move forward. So
Seems like a month might be too long of a time chunk though, because if like you're measuring it in weeks, like.
Well, we do measure it by hours, so they get 450 hours of FMLA. So that's how we track it.
And I think one thing that, and I am not an HR professional, so I'll preface my comments with deferring to our subject matter expert in the room. If, as an example, I submit an FMLA request tomorrow, for instance, I submit that to you, I have the requisite documentation and paperwork, it's approved, I have 12 months to use the 12 weeks, correct?
Not all the time. So the FMLA paperwork will say what duration of time and what the dates are that you need to be out. So
using the example of birth of a child.
birth of child, yes. So they how the city has been allowing is that they've been able to take it consecutively and intermittently, so they can stretch it out.
Over the next 12 months. So I would need to have a new FMLA approved leave in order to have that reset in your example, correct?
Exactly.
So, yeah.
It's just always a 12-month look back.
Always a 12-month
So, like,
look. It's only a 12-month period.
You're taking off shorter periods of time than it like it's just a little more complicated to administer.
It is more complicated, yes, it is.
And if I needed FMLA for, say, a knee replacement or something.
Right, and they say you're only gonna be out for 8 weeks,
Right.
then
So then I would
it's a
have,
consecutive usually,
Right.
and you'd be out for that full 8 weeks.
so I would need to have a new reason after that reason has subsided in order to kind of extend that, if you will, or use more leave.
Okay.
Does that kind of get to what the example you
Yeah, well,
described?
so I guess, like if I'm young and I have a child, or if I'm old and I need a knee replaced, and on the day that I want to start taking off, say 8 weeks, I'm only eligible for 6 weeks. But by the time those 6 weeks elapsed, when you look back 12 weeks, I would be eligible for the following 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Can I just take the 8 weeks altogether in one request, or do I have to wait till I'm done with my 6 weeks of eligible?
No, you can take the 8 weeks off.
Okay.
Absolutely, as long as you haven't taken off other FMLA time in the 12-month look back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright.
And it's available, yeah.
It's gonna be fun to administer, no worries with
Yeah.
this.
I think it's a pretty standard change. I've seen it in my workplace.
Yeah, most employers have it. The calendar year is really rare anymore, but
I'm just grateful we have Sarah and her team in HR to manage it.
and this slide here just again states the 60-day window. So that's why the update for this FMLA period is effective March 1st instead of right after this, because we need to let employees know our intention of going to this from a calendar year to a rolling look back. So, and then this will mirror the paid parental leave as Chad mentioned. We've been wanting to do this for a couple of years, actually.
All right.
All right, and And then the next update, these are very smaller updates. We are looking to increase the city's tipping policy at the finance department's recommendation. This is to be in line with kind of a current average in 2023. The current tipping policy for the city is 15%, the proposed is 20%. We have a fire uniform allowance. This is an update that actually should have been when we came to you in January with the command staff for police. Basically, this has already been budgeted. This is for the annual replacement of their uniforms. Our command staff was meant to mirror the union employees in terms of how much they get every year for the uniform allowance. So this is really an update that I should have brought sooner, and I didn't realize until we were processing uniform allowance every January and July. And then we were looking at the handbook, and it didn't show that the command staff get it in a check. It basically that we would reimburse them through a P card. So that is that change. And then adding the think space as a nursing room. With the think space we added a few years ago, it's been a great room for employees that have been using it after returning from maternity leave. And then we added a duress alarm to the senior center in 2020. So as we're going through all these employee handbook, looking at some of the things that, we should add this, we should edit this. There's always something, it seems. We also added a voluntary supplemental accident benefit that personnel had approved. This was that new benefit that we put in place this year, where if employee were to get into an accident, they get a benefit. It's a lump sum of cash they can do whatever they want with, and this is put on by employee trust funds through where we have our health insurance. And so I'm just adding that as a benefit that the city provides with the other list of benefits. And then we updated the inclement weather policy. So the big change was to have the city administrator in consultation with the emergency management director and the director of public works to clear all delays or closures to city facilities. This is just that there's consistency in what buildings are closed and when and why. We added ice storm warning and wind chill warning as another reason why the city might delay or cancel or close. Also city staff to safely clear parking lots and walkways. That should be for consideration, but I want to make sure this does not apply to election days. So this is only for non-election days. The announcement will be made to delay or close by 6 a.m. instead of, I think it's 6:30 right now. So we're looking to try to make that a little bit sooner when we can. And then, of course, if city facilities are closed that day, any public meetings that are scheduled for that day would be canceled.
I did have one question about the inclement weather. When I was reading through it on the, it listed a new bullet point that said closure signs on city buildings would be one of the notification methods.
Right.
So I assume one of the public safety staff that's required to work on those days would be the person that would post it. Okay.
Yeah, we're still working on some of the implementation details, but we did do that last year on a couple of occasions when we needed to close City Hall. There was a public safety member that was available that could post those signs. There could be a bit of a delay depending on what sort of activity might be happening in the city that the public safety teams are responding to, but generally speaking, yes, it would be a public safety employee that will help post those.
And that wouldn't be a challenge if we move to a new police. I assume a lot of those employees are the police department.
Or fire, yeah.
Or fire.
Yeah.
But I guess, so when we move to a new facility
Sure.
for the police, it's not gonna, I don't know, it was so specific that I was like worried that maybe you won't be able to
Right.
Yeah.
meet that expectation.
Well, what we could do, actually, you bring up a good point, is maybe we should strike that for now as we continue to refine the protocol, so to
See if
speak, and
it
it's just part of the
works.
protocol, that we'll have internally. So as another method of communicating, just in the event somebody shows up at a city facility.
It'd be nice to have, but it just
Yeah.
seems like it's
Yeah,
it's a
that's
lot to
a,
expect.
it's a very good point.
There was some verbiage in there about updating the website stuff, and I thought maybe something about city employees getting a notification, but is there like a notify me that I can sign up for that'll say, ooh, we're closed today because of the weather?
We can look at that and create a sign up for Notify Me on the web. We can talk to IT and see if we can add that as one of the categories so that whenever a city facility closes, that would send out an alert to those who have subscribed to that.
And if we just go to fitchburgwi.gov, is there a news flash that says?
Yeah, typically what would happen is there's a banner that goes across the top that says like
Even better.
alert, city facilities are closed due to weather, so that's how we've done it in the past, so it's right there at the top.
We've got some really nice software, Alert Media, that employees can sign up. You can get a text, an email, even a phone call if there's a closure delay, or even if there's another emergency, if there's an active shooter, bad severe weather. So it's nice. It's a app that we have to look more into updating and making sure everybody's in there. But we've used that in the past, in the last couple of years. So it's been a great program for employees.
And I noticed you kind of you're deciding yourselves whether you're gonna close down. Like, my workplace takes the Wimps way out and they say, we're closed if UW closes.
Mm-hmm. That'll be a factor, and we'll look at school districts, but it's probably not as simple as just following, at least in our case, a school district, for instance. And one of the big things we were trying to do with this is also bring some consistency across facilities. We have multiple different facilities, be it City Hall, Senior Center, Community Center, Library, and trying to make sure we're all working off the same language and making a collective, there's a collective closure instead of, for instance, one building remaining open and two being closed, right? That just creates confusion for the public, creates some confusion for employees, like, well, they're closed, we're open, what's going on? So, yeah. And then there are times still, for instance, the library is a great example. Wendy and her team will still have that discretionary authority outside of normal City Hall hours to make that call utilizing the guidelines within the policy as well, which is what they have done in the past. So, yeah.
I had one thing that I wanted you to look at, just the wording of it for the fire uniform reimbursement and stuff. It says annual checks will be issued in January and July, which is really like semi-annual checks, or I just wondered if that wording was a little confusing or could be less ambiguous. Checks will be issued annually in January and July, something like that.
Sure. Yeah,
Makes sense.
thank you. Okay. Alright.
Should we vote on those changes? I mean, like the updates, and then we talk about paid parental leave? I don't know if it's important to do it all at once or.
Well, paid parental leave is gonna be part of the employee handbook,
Okay,
so
so
it's
we'll
all tied together, but, okay. And then the new benefit, paid parental leave, very exciting. So, as you know, this was included in the 2024 budget. We put a policy together. This was looking at a number of other policies out there, City of Madison, City of Sun Prairie. We had legal or employment attorney review it. We shared it with our department heads too to get feedback. And so the highlights, eligible employees should be FMLA eligible. So they have to have been with the city for at least a year to get the 2 weeks of paid parental leave. This is for any non-represented permanent full and permanent part-time employees. So employees who are hourly, LTE, seasonal aren't eligible for paid parental leave. The union employees at this time, because we have to bargain any benefits with the unions, that's why it's only for non-represented at this time. But of course, we'd work with the unions if this is a benefit that they would like to see for their employees. It gives employees 2 weeks of paid leave for birth or adoption of a child. It also covers fetal loss at or after 20 weeks. If there's someone that experiences a loss, they get 1 week of paid parental leave. It's also prorated for part-time employees. So for example, if someone works 20 hours a week, they're going to receive 40 hours of paid parental leave. And then in no case can an employee take more than 2 weeks in a rolling 12-month period, going back to that 12-month period. And then it can be taken consecutively, or if approved by the supervisor, it can also be taken intermittently. So you might have someone that wants to take a full week, and then they maybe want to space out the remaining week that they have. So as long as it's okay with the supervisor and they can manage operationally, then they can approve that. And then we do want them to return to work for at least 6 months following the use of paid parental leave, otherwise repay the city for that 2 weeks. So that is paid parental leave. There was a lot there in that policy, so I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Yeah, I went through and I was trying to poke holes in the wording, try and find edge cases, and, it says, you have to have given birth to or fathered a child or adopted a child, or the employee's spouse has given birth to a child. And so, just trying to think of if I have fathered a child, but I don't speak with my girlfriend anymore because we broke up and she has the baby, I'd be eligible. But if two gay men bring home a baby, or two lesbians who are not married and and the one at home has, the non-employee has a baby, they wouldn't be eligible according to the exact wording in here.
I want to be clear that certainly would not be our intent, and
Exactly.
I certainly am not a legal expert, but my understanding as I reviewed this policy would be is that if I were either lesbian or gay, that would I not typically be adopting a child?
I don't know how that works, like,
Yeah,
Teen Chastain brought home a baby.
Right.
Did they adopt it before they brought it home, or
Right.
that kind of thing?
Yes, and I would think the same would apply if you use surrogate.
Yeah.
Is that you are ultimately adopting the child when it's born. So that is something, if you want us to clarify, we certainly can, because the intent of the policy was not to exclude anyone by any stretch of the imagination.
My concern is that if you want to catch all the edge cases,
Mhm.
you're probably going to have, a page and a half of text, and maybe you just put some verbiage in there that says, if you have, it's open to negotiation. If you're not specifically listed as something that's covered, come talk to us, then we'll be reasonable about it.
Yeah, I would assume that the city wouldn't deny something that wasn't
Yeah.
specifically out, like if something technically wasn't specifically outlined.
Right.
Sure.
I have to imagine that we're not the type of city that would just be like, well, this doesn't meet the letter of it. That's not how we operate.
Right, yeah.
So I'm less concerned about it just because
Yeah.
there's a spirit, and then obviously if there's maybe some edge case that
Yes.
comes up, we could update the policy accordingly, to address that, to
Yeah.
make sure it's outlined.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I was going to offer that, why don't we ensure through our labor council or employment council that sort of situation is covered by the adoption, I guess that's how I'm believing it's covered, and if it's not, then we can certainly come back with a potential update to the policy, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't want the letter of this thing to
Mhm.
preclude a case where you obviously want to give somebody the
Correct.
leave.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Agreed, yep.
Thanks for bringing that up.
But otherwise, I like it. I think it's great that we're able to do this. It'd be great to do more, but I think
It's a good
as a
start.
starting point, I think it's fantastic, and I know not enough places in the United States offer this at this point. And it's great that it's both for birthing and non-birthing parents, so that's important, that's very important as well.
I have one more thing that I wrote down. It says the city of Fitchburg may take disciplinary action up to and including termination of employment against an employee who uses paid parental leave for the purposes other than described in this policy, which is fine. But then it says, an example would be engaging in other paid employment while on an approved paid parental leave. And I was wondering, is anybody gonna get, well, and again, this is the spirit versus the letter, but let's say that I work for the city, but I also have some kind of a side gig. And my wife has a baby, and I take time off, and I get pinged on my side hustle, and, I do some work while I'm on paid leave. Am I gonna get in trouble for that?
As the policy is currently written, that would be problematic, and I think if someone was going to be in that situation, it would be best for them to use their paid time off that's been provided through the PTO bank. Because you can use this leave potentially intermittently, correct?
Yes, you can with supervisor approval.
So you would have the ability to kind of pick and choose where you're not going to be working a side employment job when you're collecting the paid leave under the paid parental leave policy. So if, for instance, an employee was taking 3 weeks off for the birth of a child or adoption of a child, and for whatever reason they knew there was a day within there that they needed to work a part-time job, I would suggest they coordinate with HR and be upfront about that and find the strategies in which to ensure that it's not going to run afoul of the FMLA policy or the paid parental leave policy, but still allow them to take that time off. So if feasible, again, each situation has its own unique characteristics to it. I would see a situation where somebody is able to utilize the paid parental leave for a portion of that 3 weeks, and then, use paid time off for the other portion of that leave, and ensuring that if they were perhaps required to work on an outside job, that outside work fell in the time they were using paid personal time off.
And if it's unexpected, can they come back and say, hey, look,
Yeah.
I got this emergency call, I had to take care of it.
Yeah, but I do think it's important for employees to recognize that if they're taking time off for the purposes of spending their time bonding with a new child or caring for a child, it can get problematic from a perception view from members of our community, particularly our taxpayers, that if they're now out working a part-time job while they're on paid parental leave. So I definitely think that it's important to make sure that there's communication up front with human resources, just to ensure that everybody's good to go.
But if in another pay status, like using accrued time, like you had mentioned, vacation, then they would be fine. The goal is not to take away those 2 weeks from, people that have other secondary employment, but just to make sure they're not working that second job while they're getting paid parental leave.
I'm just thinking it might be easy for somebody to not even realize they're breaking the rules.
We're gonna meet, so HR, when we meet with each employee that's gonna go out with paid parental leave, we're gonna have a good meeting with them just to make sure that they're aware of the policy. So we're gonna walk through this with each employee, so they'll know the policy. So,
Alright.
yeah,
It's a good question.
very good question. And so that's all I have for you today. Yeah.
So this is my first year on council with the city. Do you overhaul the employee handbook every year, or is this a special thing?
As things come up, as we meet and issues and questions from employees, that's where we sit down and we look at the policies and look to see where we can improve or clarify. Or in this case, a lot of times at the end of the year, after the budget's passed, we're like, oh, we got some new bilingual incentive policy. That was a new policy last year that we added into the employee handbook around this time. So it seems like December is a busy month for employee handbook updates, but we already have a few that we're kind of maybe looking at for a February. So we have on the calendar a January personnel committee, but looking to cancel that and just have a February one because we won't be ready for January already.
Great.
But we'll have a lot. We have some new positions to recruit for that we'll have. We'll have some reclasses for police, the new captains, classification that was approved in the budget.
Yep.
So yeah, hoping to meet in February if possible instead of January. But yeah, it's normal.
Okay.
You'll see more employee handbook updates.
Well, this is great. I mean, I love these updates, and I'm glad it's a living, breathing document that's continually
We're always
evolving.
looking at it. Yeah.
This is the most extensive upgrade I've
It
seen in my 4 years,
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's by far.
And I think a lot of that's tied to the conversion to PTO.
Yeah.
Because that touched on so many different facets of the employee handbook that's also why it seems like there's a ton of different changes. I mean, PTO is a notable change in how we allow people to take paid leave. So it was a bit surprising to a certain extent how many different areas of the handbook that change hit. So.
All right, so I'll take a motion for updating the employee handbook as laid out in the agenda packet.
With some of because there was a couple of strikes.
Yeah, with the inclement weather.
Striking signage on the inclement weather
Yep.
until we can kind of work through that.
Yep.
And I think that is, we're gonna add clarification on the 10.5 holidays, just to make sure people know it as part of the PTO bank that at the equivalent of 10.5 days of those hours are for holidays.
And we'll modify the fire department uniform
Yes,
allowance
yep.
to the language.
So 3 amendments.
Yeah.
With those three, so I need a motion
Well,
to
did
update.
you want to try and put in anything, regarding special cases for the paid parental leave, or?
Well,
I wouldn't, I
Yeah.
personally wouldn't
Just
recommend
leave
it
it the
at
way
this
it is.
time.
Yeah.
But I think we should keep it
Yeah,
on.
we'll actually confirm that that situation that you mentioned is a covered situation, as we believed it would be under the adoption. If it's not, we'll look to bring something forward to ensure that it is covered and what sort of the appropriate language would be to utilize in the policy manual update.
Look at that in February, maybe if.
Yeah, if there's a change
That's a good
necessary,
idea.
we could look to bring it in February.
Alright, so I'll take a motion to update the employee handbook with those amendments that we just discussed.
So move.
So, I'll second.
Moved by Alder Maldonado.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? Alright, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thanks for all the great work.
Thank you, guys.
Moving
Appreciate the feedback and suggestions.
Yeah.
Moving on to item number 5, announcements.
I don't have any except just looking for a February personnel committee, so if you're okay with it, I'll cancel January, and then I'll reach out and we'll find a date for February.
That sounds good to me. I do have a question if, Joe, do you wanna go?
Yeah, I was wondering, I know there were some new positions that were approved in the budget for next year. Do you know when we'll be talking about position descriptions?
Yeah, so that'll be February. So January 2nd is the earliest I can send the 2 job descriptions to our consultant to see what pay grade they're in. And then February, we'll have that recommendation, and then we can already post the positions about mid-February. And then hopefully have 2 new full-time employees around April, end of April, I would guess.
I'll just say that I've mentioned the community specialist position to folks outside of the city, and everybody I've talked to is really excited about it, so.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing those in February.
And that's all I've got.
Great. There's nothing else? I will adjourn the meeting of the Personnel Committee at 5:07 PM. Thanks so much.